committed to delivering information that's important to you and your community.
Hello and welcome again to Life Esteem. Always great to have you as a viewer. Hey, today we're going to talk about a lot of things, in particular about gun control and about safety and the whole 9 yards. We have with us Richard Oliver, who's the principal founder of what's called the Parapet Group, and we're so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Man, we had a pretty lively conversation on the phone there, and I learned a lot, and I thought, man, this is going to be exciting, because not everybody's thinking in the way you're thinking, and you have some background that, you want to lift up to us. Tell us about the Parapet Group and why you started it.
The Parapet Group is an elite security company and law enforcement training company. I've been in the security business for a little 26 years.
Wow.
I started the Parapet Group back in 2005. And primarily when I started, it was CPR, first aid and AED training, which was heavily needed in the black community at the time. And then we also started with firearms training. So through my travels and life experience, I traveled all over the country. I trained with the U.S. Air Marshals out of Boston in their headquarters at 6 Hour Academy up in Epping, New Hampshire. Trained with the Secret Service, the DEA, became certain instructors in certain fields for them. Belonged to an organization called ILETA, the International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association.
Nice.
I'm a master shooting instructor with ILFE, so that's the International Association of Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors. So I traveled around the country, picked up a lot of knowledge, took it back to primarily my security officers for my company to offer to our clients. So I wanted to put the best armed security product out.
Wow.
So that's what I did. So that was my background, but simultaneously, I was training civilians in firearm safety and firearm use. So that's how I got started.
But you have a military background? Or?
No, not military, none whatsoever.
How did you get involved in this?
It's a story you wouldn't believe. Out of college, I went to Philadelphia University after Central High School in Philadelphia, and pledged Alpha Phi Alpha at Temple University, and then I ended up running a couple of go-go spots, nude spots, in Camden. They were along the Admiral Wilson Boulevard. So this is the late 80s, the early 90s. They were the totally nude places. And I ended up working for them and running 3 locations.
Wow.
And then after that, I ended up purchasing a bar. And I had that for 10 years and was always doing security for celebrities and people, and then it just morphed into this. That was my background.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable
background.
Listen, it doesn't matter how you got there, you got there. Right?
Exactly, exactly.
But now the Parapet Group is your organization,
yes,
right?
it
So
is.
you decided to create this.
Yes.
And tell us a lot because you do a lot of different types of trainings.
We do all kinds of training. I'm an NRA law enforcement handgun instructor. I'm an NRA civilian instructor, pistol, rifle, shotgun, home firearm safety, range safety officer. I'm a law enforcement instructor in over 30 disciplines, from impact munitions, 37 millimeter and 40 millimeter grenade launchers, OC spray, defensive tactics, expandable baton, MOAB, management of aggressive behavior. I really train in a lot of different things, close quarter combat, extensive shooting backgrounds. And so we offer these courses to law enforcement agencies, and we offer some to the civilian side. And we even train children, parents. We teach gun safety first, but we have a couple of charter schools that were interested in having a rifle club, which rifling is an Olympic sport, and the Cub Scouts do it.
That's right.
So I even have a couple charter schools that we've trained, and they have shooting teams. So we do a little bit of everything.
You have a unique perspective. I know you and I talked, and I want to just get right to that, that you feel that knowing guns and actually owning a gun actually brings more safety to a community than not. Tell a little bit about that and why you think that the African American community and just communities in general should be more aware of and possessing guns.
Okay, well, just take some of the mean numbers. So it's based on scientific research. It's not an opinionated argument. It's more of an argument based on the facts and the numbers. In America, we have over 30,000 gun deaths. 30,000 people a year die from gun violence. But what the number they aren't talking about, the less sensational number is, handguns have a lethality rate maybe 15 to 20%. So if you get shot with a handgun, 15 to 20% people will die, 80% will live. So if you look at the raw numbers, 30,000 people are getting killed, you're about 125 to 150,000 people are actually getting shot. And then the United States Justice Department, the NRA organization, they compile numbers and they say that a handgun is used to stop a crime more than 2 million times per year without firing a shot. So that being the case, just the mean numbers in itself would dictate that if a population has a gun, the bad guys are less likely to be predators because they don't know who to attack.
But now you do know there's other research out there that says total opposite. In fact, we had Dr. John, I forget his name now. He's a peace activist. Dr. John Rohr, who's all into statistics, and he was basically debunking a lot of that because the NRA is something he takes on. And he's saying that it's the complete opposite, and he brought in some experts from Chicago and blah, 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 blah. But that being said, I mean, it doesn't matter. The point is that if you own one, you better know how to use it. Let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of people do grab these guns up, and they have no training whatsoever. And the question a lot of people in the community has is, first of all, how do so many of our young people get guns? And why are they able just to purchase these things? It seems like everybody have them. The second off is, why would you get one and then not have any concept of how to clean it, how to use it, or anything like that? In Harrisburg alone, we've had at least 3 or 4 incidents where I know the young people shot another young person only because they were playing with the gun. I was a counselor in the school, and the kid was, and the kid, they took off from school, which they shouldn't have done. And they were just playing, they went to hand the gun to the person, young girl gets shot and killed. And then that's happened so many times. So that's another part of the equation. How do we, I don't know if we've ever had a course in Harrisburg around gun safety, and you obviously could provide that.
Right.
So tell us about why that's important.
But look at what you just said. You said you can walk into a gun store, and it's a legislative thing. It's more so common sense. I guess if the legislature didn't deem it necessary for people to get a driver's license, you'd have more people driving without getting a driver's license. So that being the case, depending on the locality or the state you're in, it's not necessary for you to take a course to own a gun.
Well, but most people aren't even worried about taking a course, are they?
So what happens is you can go to the store and you can buy a gun in most states.
But most people are not buying them in the store. Not around Harrisburg that I know. We don't have no gun stores. I mean, these young boys are strapped and they're shooting each other like crazy, but they're not going to gun stores. So my question is, why are all these guns on the street? Because that's the real thing that we talk about. There's not a gun store in Harrisburg that I know. Do you know? I don't know one. But I know that all these young boys have guns. So how do I know? Because our prisons are filled to the gills. And we can go out and talk to them. It's like, well, where did you get the gun from, man? Got it from Bobo, got it from JoJo, got it from whoever.
And I wouldn't know anything that because when I want a gun, I go to the gun store, I go to a gun shop.
That's right.
So I'm a law-abiding citizen, so I wouldn't know where the underworld or the criminal world get their stuff from. Yeah. I don't use drugs, never have, so I wouldn't know where they get drugs from. And
that's part of the issue, So we need to do more of this because this is what it's really all about. But you mentioned the Boy Scouts, so they teach that kind of stuff. They did, but a lot of our kids aren't doing that.
Well, what happens is, especially in the black community, guns traditionally from slavery to the to after slavery, the Reconstructive era, and then the Jim Crow laws of the South. There was a stigma, and it's like we're brainwashed. Guns were taboo. So much so that after the Civil War, we were supposedly to gain freedom, and then you had the Jim Crow laws of the South, where a black man could only own a shotgun.
Right.
So whether he was a sharecropper or what having to go hunting, he can only have a shotgun, and most of the time the ammunition was buckshot. But it was designed for a reason. The KKK or the white mobs could stand at the end of the field on the road, and they can put bullets from rifles into that sharecropper's wooden home, and he couldn't shoot back if he wanted to because the lethality range of a shotgun is different, and depending on the ammunition with birdshot. So they didn't allow the black man to own pistols or rifles until a lot later.
Very true.
So that being said, traditionally we have this thing about guns are bad. The only black people who had them were in the underworld. You know what I mean? And they had pistols, Saturday night specials. So then we kept it tattooed. So what happens is your parents or someone else who may have a gun, and you go to your cousin's house and your aunt's boyfriend has a gun, You don't know anything about a gun. Your kids don't know anything about a gun because you don't own one.
That's right.
But there are over 700 million guns in America for a population of 330 million people.
Isn't that something?
We own guns. So chances are, if you send your children to their cousin's house or their aunt's house or their uncle's house or your girl, there may be a gun there. But if you refuse and want to deny teaching your children's gun safety, what happens when the kid at that house says, listen to what my mom's boyfriend has, or listen to what my daddy has? Your kid doesn't know, don't touch, leave the area, and notify the parent.
So true.
The NRA has a program called Eddie Eagle that they've been teaching for 30 or 40 years, and they've done millions upon millions of kids. But I don't know how often it makes it into the urban area. But we need that knowledge because a gun is almost in every home. So if you don't teach your kids, it may not be in your home, but if you send them somewhere for the weekend or for a week, they can get harmed by a gun.
There you go.
Well, you know, it's interesting you're making that analysis in regard to that, because I know in a lot of urban cities, I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, that was something you more saw with folks that were doing things that were inappropriate
Exactly.
and illegal. But when I moved here to Pennsylvania, this is a very cultural place in regard to hunting.
Right.
So there are certain parts of the Commonwealth that most young people have had access to guns and know probably more about them than they would in a lot of other urban communities and areas.
Right.
And it may be of help, as you said, because I could have my son or daughter, or grandchildren in my case, go to a peer's home that they definitely do have guns available, and they would have no clue about whatsoever about how to handle or how to work with a gun.
So I think they do, right?
Well, some of these, some of these young people are misled in that regard. So what you're suggesting is that we really have some way or manner to introduce gun safety and knowledge to people in general, not just young people.
In general, it's imperative whether they choose to own a gun or not.
Right.
They should introduce these stuffs in the kid. And like I said, the NRA's program, I think, starts from kindergarten to 6th grade. It used to go longer to 8th grade. They have many instructional material. They have grants. And NRA instructors are qualified to teach it. Excuse me, a lot of police departments partner up with them to teach these courses in the elementary schools. And it's called the Elliott Eagle program.
You went to school in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And you graduated from which high school again?
Central.
Did you ever have one of those courses for the 12 years that you were in school?
Never.
Yeah, that's my point. So I know that they're out there, but they're not teaching us. And they never have, okay? And I'm older than you, I'm sure. But the point being, I've never seen one of these courses offered anywhere near an urban center. And it's just a shame. And I get your point. And so the question has to be asked, then why not? So let's get to what you do then, because you do this kind of training. Right. So how can someone, let's say they're interested, they want to bring you and bring your courses to any area that's watching this program. How would they go about it, and what would you teach them?
It's contact me. It depends on what they want to learn. We teach everything from home firearm safety, rifle, pistol, shotgun, how to store it home, how to use it, when to shoot, when not to shoot. So you have to understand, if you're going to carry a gun or own a gun, you have to understand some concepts about the law. The definition of deadly force and lethal force, when you can shoot, when you can't shoot. Do you have a duty to retreat? And then we have to talk about gun safety and marksmanship, safely loading, unloading, storing, using. Everything about using a gun. So if you're giving someone your car keys, you know that they have a license from the state that they passed. These stores, and maybe it's a society problem. They sell guns and they don't even ask you, have you ever fired or whatever. You go in and you have the money and your background's clean. You fill out that form, which is a national form. It's only 16 questions. The form is 16 questions. And they do the criminal background checks, which are good. But they're saying the loopholes, and I don't know if it's necessarily loopholes. Does he have a mental problem? Are all those records connected, and do they coincide? So that's an issue. But even if all that is fine, they send you home with a gun, and they have not taught you how to use it. Have you ever fired it? And and that's it.
One of the largest gun shows on the East Coast happens right here in Harrisburg. It's called the Outdoor Gun Show. So it'll be taking place next week, in fact. And you will have thousands of people here, as you know. Right. So they did an expose where a guy literally just went in without almost any kind of identification, whatever, just bought up all these guns, stood outside of the farm show with all these guns.
But see, that's media propaganda, and it's a trick. Because this is how it works. In Pennsylvania, If you want to buy a firearm and a handgun, which is concealable and you can carry it and easily to commit crimes, because most crimes are committed with handguns,
Right.
you have to go through the proper background checks.
Not-
if you're
wait a minute,
legal.
though. Wait
But
a
at the gun show,
Yeah.
this is, you
Yeah.
can buy a long gun without the check, not handguns.
Okay, now
So the
this guy bought the handguns that you're saying he couldn't buy, and this station right here had the reporters that are sitting out there go in, walk with this guy. He buys the guns, he comes out, and then he stands there and tells you. So you're right, but that's not the way it happens.
Oh, that's-
And I'm just saying,
those
and
are
that wasn't
people-
no trick. That was
those-
just somebody who just did it. That's all.
Well, then
Just so it can be
you
done.
could have followed JoJo from the corner and asked him to go get you a gun and did an expose on that. So
But
if
and
people wanna
JoJo would have
be-
bought the guns.
And JoJo would have bought
and brought them to Harrisburg.
Yeah,
and
but
that's
they're-
the point.
They're
though.
getting them. You
Yeah,
know, the criminal person is going to be able to get the guns because it's available.
But this guy was just a guy that they hired to, he was a college graduate like anybody else. He didn't commit no crime. He just wanted to go in, show you that you can buy these guns. Because everybody in that gun show, as you know, doesn't have the same morals that you have. These guys are there to make money. And they'll sell them to anybody. And that's what they did. That's what they showed. And that's part of the problem. It breaks down. It's not that we don't have laws. We do. It's that we have law breakers. And some of the law breakers are causing people to pick up guns and shit.
So you're always going to have law breakers.
Yes, you are.
So then what happens is I would compare that scenario. You guys did an expose on this. We've made drugs illegal.
Yes, we did.
People can get them.
Yeah.
In the time of Prohibition, alcohol was illegal.
And they got it.
And they got them. So if you make guns illegal,
Yes.
people are going to get them.
And
You're
so-
doing an
but
expose,
that's the point.
Doesn't
they're going to get them.
Yeah, but you're talking about gun safety, but unfortunately, what our community is talking about is how do we stop? Listen, you know and I know that Chicago is out of control now. And that's not people going into gun stores buying guns. That's Bobby and them on the street picking up. So how do we stop that? That's what the average person that I know wants to know about. Why do we have so many people with guns that they don't have a clue about how to use it, but they can get them, and how do we stop that? And how do you train these people to say, we need to start enforcing these laws? Because that's what it's really all about.
That's a societal problem. That's a governmental problem. That issue, I think, is almost too big for me to wrap my head around.
Yes, it
To be
is.
quite honest. But I'll tell you this, because that is the norm, and that is the age we live in. All I'm saying, if you are a law-abiding citizen and you want to, and you're living here, why wouldn't you have one for yourself? Because when you dial 911, that's only after you've been a victim of a crime.
And I'm with you on that. I don't mind. I mean, we can own a gun, but I'm talking about, okay. So part of it is what you train is for people like us who own
Yeah,
guns.
that's
and
what
so
I'm
what
talking
I'm
about.
saying to you is, where do we, if I wanted you to come into our community and talk, I would like for you to talk about not only gun safety, but what can we do to stop it? There's just too much, it's gun proliferation right now.
Gun
It's just like
proliferation.
drugs, the same thing as
And I would
drugs.
think that these guns are coming from, they aren't necessarily, very seldom, they aren't stealing them from gun stores or gun shows. So they're getting them from homes.
Yeah.
So people are not securing their firearms.
There you go.
And that's where they're coming from. So you asked me before earlier where they're coming from. Most of them are stolen, and they're stolen from residences or businesses. It's a small number that's stolen from stores because the ATF really does a good job of controlling and locking down those stores. So they're coming from residents. You break into a residence, a guy's a gun collector or what have you,
Yeah.
and he has 15, 20 guns, and maybe they had time to get in the safe or what have you, and he could have been on vacation or out of town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the criminal's fault. This is what they do. But this is where the guns are coming
So
from.
part of what you want to say to gun owners is they have to secure the guns.
They have to secure the guns, but
They
then we
have
also
to.
have another avenue. We have straw purchases. So people, sometimes females or other people who can legally buy a gun, go buy a gun and then come right outside the store, but they actually bought that gun for someone else. It's known as a straw purchase. That's
Amen.
a crime.
That's right.
They have penalties for that on the books, but it's really not enforced that the penalty is. So if the penalty is a few years in jail, 3 to 5 years, whatever the penalty is, it's very seldom that they give out that penalty. So people know in the black community or whatever community, I can do this. If I do get caught, I'm probably looking at probation.
Does it stress you then that we have a president who's talking about building a wall, but you have a serious problem of people doing straw purchases, breaking into people's homes, getting guns? That's what's killing us. So the Mexicans coming across the wall and killing me. But the point is, I haven't heard him address this. Is there a problem there? Is this something that, I mean, how do you feel about that? Maybe you see it differently than I do,
Well-
but I haven't heard him mention this at all.
Well, what happens is this. There's an epidemic of gun violence in America.
Yes.
But who are the victims? We are. So what are they addressing for us? So it's not just this president. I would say it's almost every president.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So I can't remember, and I'm old enough, I can't remember that any president that we have elected where it was, whether you jump up and down in joy, where it has changed the plight of the black man so much.
Yes.
You know
Even
what I mean?
Obama tried. He actually
He tried, but look what kind of Congress he got,
Yeah.
and for whatever
Yeah, that's
reason.
right. Yeah.
But so, and we looked at it as that. It's good to see a black man in it, but it's not. It doesn't matter what color. It's the institution.
That's right. Yeah.
So what is the institution going to do for the black man?
So do you think there should be a more aggressive kind of? I mean, we're serious about building this wall. We're serious about tearing down Obamacare. We're serious about stopping, Muslims and everyone else coming from into this country. But why not talk about then the proliferation of guns and the violence that's actually killing our people every
Because
single
it's
day?
killing black people.
There you go.
It's killing black people
Yeah.
because what happens, and police officer, I'm a law enforcement trainer. I work with guys. I have guys that have worked for me over the past 20 years that have gone on to become police officers. I mean, when we're talking about police officers, we have to understand in America, you have police officers, but there are 3 times as many private and public security officers that make up the law enforcement community.
Sure.
So it's just isn't, whether it's hospitals, universities, they aren't. So what happens is they do an incredible job. But what happens when one of those guys get killed, it's like the earth stands still and stops.
Lord, yes.
But when Bobby gets killed, he's a husband, a father, a son, a brother, an uncle, a nephew. Gets a little article, and that's it. There's no follow.
If he gets the article.
If he can get the article, because most of them aren't in the news.
Exactly.
Because you guys live in this community, I live in, and most of them aren't in
Don't
the
even hear
news.
about it.
So what happens is we have to have the will. But you see, they have the will to stop Obamacare. They have the will to build a wall, but they have no will to really address the ills that are affecting the black community. And besides guns, you have a lot of other social, economic issues, jobs, education.
Okay.
We're living in ghettos,
Yeah.
So those things
all that.
are more prevalent. And if you took care of those things, they would start to stem the tide of gun violence, again, with education.
Yeah.
Well, we just saw this last evening, matter of fact, a whole debate about a scenario where a homeowner shot a teenager and leaving out his property.
Right.
And was he, in fact, within his rights to do that, because this particular individual never did get into the home, more of a stalking,
Right.
casing and seeing, in fact, what may be able to happen. And he, I guess, frightened or ran him off, but in the process of getting into the car and then going down the road, he shot at them.
Right.
And killed the one guy.
And killed the one gentleman, individual.
That's not hard anyway. That's not hard. That's common sense, but it
But the
defies
thought
logic.
was he within his rights once he left the property?
He wasn't in his rights because you can only use a gun. The definition of deadly force is lethal force is that a person has to have the ability, the opportunity, and it has to be happening right now to injure you or someone else with grave or serious or deadly force.
So this man could be charged.
That person was leaving.
He was leaving.
So the gun owner who shot was not under any threat of any injury
That's right.
whatsoever. So he had no reason
That's right.
under the sun, to fire his weapon. He was not in any threat of danger or harm whatsoever. So it's really a basic question. But that's a basic question. What about when the police officers kill unarmed black women and men? They are not under any threat of harm whatsoever. And we see it on video and they still get off. No justice.
Someone just said recently that their get out of jail card is, I fear for my life. That's all they got to say. I felt threatened, I fear for my life. And they never get convicted even. They don't even get indicted. I mean, it's like, come on.
But it doesn't matter. The facts speak for itself. You can't fear for your life from someone running down the street, hopping in the car, fleeing from you.
I know. Just
You
crazy.
can't, Walter Scott in South Carolina, you
Yes.
can't, you're not in fear for your life. When he's running from you, he's in fear.
And
And,
then
he was rightfully so in fear because he got shot in the
Absolutely.
back. But that's a hung jury.
Yeah,
try them
hung
again.
jury. Come on now, stuff like that. So, we got to get you up here, man. I like what you're saying and what you're talking about, and this is the kind of debate and kind of discussion we need to have. And quite frankly, we're just not doing it, So how do you find, like, I know you're going to be speaking tonight, for example, in Philadelphia at, was it?
University of Pennsylvania. Okay. I'll be speaking at the Greenfield Intercultural Center at 3708 Chestnut Street. There's a program tonight called Dead or Alive, People of Color, Guns and Lethal Weapons in White America. You have a whole host of speakers on the panel. It should be a lively discussion tonight between 6 and 8 p.m. And I'm looking forward to being on the panel.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to start, that's also going to kick off an organization of two organizations that I'm co-founded with Dr. Maurice Henderson. The first organization being the National Training Institute for Law Enforcement, Restorative Justice, Armed Personnel, Public Safety and Violence Prevention Specialists, and then another organization, the National Association for Guns and Lethal Weapons for People of Color.
Nice.
So the kickoffs for those two organizations will also be tonight and coincide at this event. And it's a discussion that we need to have, but we need to put work into it.
That's right.
We have to educate our kids. We have to educate the parents. We have to educate the homeowners, the gun owners, and we have to take care of these things.
It's a question. How have the churches responded? Have they been welcoming and bringing in this kind of discussion, as well as the schools, local public schools, or any schools?
I'll tell you this. We tried to offer this program to a couple of schools in the inner city, I believe in 2007 and 2008. Okay. The schools were all on board. So we went to, I don't want to even put their names out there, we went to a couple council people and asked them, and the first thing they said, I handed my business card. It says that I'm an NRA instructor and we would like to have this program, and we had all the Eddie Eagle coloring books, the paraphernalia, the study guides for kindergarten to 6th grade, and the schools were on it, the principals were on it. They thought there was a need because someone had just had a kid that was killed by playing with a gun, and you go to the council people and it was like, you got an NRA card, I don't want to, I'm not a full-fledged voting member. I'm not Charleston Heston of the NRA. They aren't doing me any favors. They're a great training organization for safety, but I'm not the one. You're not going to see me with Wayne LaPierre and I'm up on the panel. Not at all. So it's a professional affiliation.
But they put a halt. But they didn't.
Just because my card said NRA, you wouldn't even listen to me.
That's one of the things that it's always a shame. I mean, you can differ with somebody on one thing, but that doesn't mean they're wrong about everything. And so we got to be careful about that. Yeah. So about churches, any?
Haven't been approached by anyone yet. Okay. Like I said, the website's been around. But what I have done is I've trained over 2,000 people from 2005 to 2013. Okay. In gun firearms and concealed carry weapons.
We're going to run out of time. Listen, I'm the pastor of Romani African Christian Church, and this is the kind of talk we do in our church. Okay. So we'd love to have you come back up, and we're going to make that happen as we get off the camera. Thank you so much for coming all this way to bring us this kind of great information. And thank you so much for watching this fantastic program with this fantastic brand. And I hope that you will take it to heart, because a lot of lives are at stake. See you next time here on Life Esteem. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.